Hi, I'm Jackie Biggs. I'm speaking to you from my kitchen, which is in a little village near the very edge of the west coast of Wales. And I'm going to, first of all, read you a few poems from my first collection, which was published in 2015, The Spaces in Between. There's quite a lot of nature and landscape in my work, so I'll start there. And read you this poem, which was inspired by the local mountain that we know as Carningley, which is just above Newport, Pembrokeshire, also known as Angel Mountain. We saw her first from the old stone cross down the dreamy valley. You catch your breath as she imposes suddenly on your world. She seems close, yet is far away. Her strength is on the air. She doesn't assist the climb over this shingles, slipping, stumbling land. Yet she draws you to her as she sucks moisture through rock to new springs. The sky above pulls and sweeps out to the farthest space beyond even her reach. Folk at work on her slopes in ancient times watched the distant seas as strangers arrived, their sails crowded with the west wind. Is that where angels lived? And where saints rested to gaze and touch their wings? Now, rough rocks like pebbles to giants lie all over this place. Icy currents stir around the summit. There is a darkness in her swirling mists as her power reaches out. Well, I'm quite well known locally for writing political poetry, which is what I did when I first started writing poetry again about 8 years ago. I've kind of moved away from that now, but there's one in this book that I'd like to read today. And this was written as a result of plans to cull badgers in our local area as a pilot project at that time, way back 7-8 years ago. And the idea of culling the badgers was to reduce the spread of bovine TB to cattle. It's highly disputed whether that works or not, and still is, even though they're still culling, especially in England. They're shooting them in their thousands. This is Stay of Execution. He looks at her without seeing. Her breath catches at his beauty as she watches. His secrets are hidden in darkness. Dusk-time creature, rummaging and rooting. Heavy and strong, yet he glides light-footed over the earth. He goes about his business in private. He touches no one. Is confident, solid, secure, self-contained in his honest life. He lifts his head, nose twitching, ears prickle, a stick cracks, he's off. The stocky swagger powers forward and disappears. He knows only his dark world. He lives in the underground, has no need of us. Yet he is significant to us, essential, so that we can blame him for our ills. We reproach him for our shortcomings and seek to damage him blamelessly, simply because he lives. Knowledgeable men and women argue about him, discuss his trapping and killing. Misguided, mistaken, ill-advised, they will shoot him. But they shall not have him now. He is free to breathe his noble and gracious air, and his earth will reclaim him in its own time. Thank you. So this book began with this poem. A lot of the work in here is about grief and loss, relationship breakdown, This is the first one in the book, Time of the Snow. She wanted to remember what time it was. She knew in years to come, she would want to know the exact moment. So she could recall it all the detail. She would want to count it, minute by minute. So she looked at the clock and watched the snow falling outside, deepening the coldness, filling the world, layer on layer, minute on minute, hour on hour. She watched the minutes pile up, while inside, time was still. She knew the moment he went. She felt the press of his hand on hers, looked at the snow, forgot the clock. Time froze. So we move on to, oh yeah, sorry, don't like people who ride. So yes, there's about relationships and relationship breakups, and some of it gets quite nasty and some of it gets quite dark and deep and horrible. And this is one that's, I find, a bit dark, and I'm not quite sure where it came from. But and you brought me roses. You broke my glass, crashed clear through the fineness of it. The tall stem is jagged, ready to tear soft skin. The fulsome bowl, thin, perfectly polished, is shattered across the floor, where fragments glint their sharpness. Wine, a deeper colour than the old life in your veins, spreads in a full-bodied bruise across orange carpet. Blood drips from the broken neck of the turning bottle in a crooked arc, and deep red petals are strewn like wind-blown tributes at a graveside. I must have been quite dark at that time. I carry on with the relationship theme, get a little more light-hearted. A couple of very short ones. Walls. People in relationships might recognize this. Relationships where they share a house or a home, for instance. Walls. He wanted everything painted white. She longed for colour. He said white is pure and clean. She said it looks dirty too soon, and it is cold. It would show all the fingerprints where they had been, and all their shadows would be clear. And this one is called Ceanothus. Do you remember the blue? Dusty but deep, flower heads making mounds of clouds. The tree grew too big, uprooted itself and left us. Another of those shared joys that we lost. I'm not bitter at all. Okay, and then you find love again, don't you? Well, you hope to, and many people do after they've been through bereavement and breakups and loss. So eventually we come to this one. The title is When. When the sun rises over frosted hills, when glaciers thaw, when frozen streams flow again and spring flowers open, when the birds sing and fly free, when I stand on the frozen beach, when I travel across the cool sea, when the south wind fills my sails, Sorry, I got interrupted. How annoying. How annoying. Sorry about that. Somebody interrupted me. I will start the poem again. This is When. When the sun rises over frosted hills, when glaciers thaw, when frozen streams flow again and spring flowers open, when birds sing and fly free, when I stand on the frozen beach, when I travel across the cool sea, when the south wind fills my sails, when music follows on the breeze, when moonlight shows the way to friendlier oceans, when the stars guide my soul to warmer shores, when I find you there, then, only then, will my heart melt. I'm sorry about that glitch. Something came up on my computer that I couldn't get rid of. These things happen. We're only human, aren't we? So I quite like this poem because I thought it was a bit funny, and I find it quite difficult to write amusing work. I think it either happens or it doesn't. It's sort of funny in a way. And then I'll read one more after this. I wrote this in Barcelona when we were on holiday. Dave and I were on holiday there. And this situation happened a lot. It's another one of those relationship things that some people might recognize. The poem's title is Word for Word. You speak and I don't hear you. Then I say what you said. I just said that, you say. Did you, I say. I didn't hear. We stand watching the traffic flow, and you speak and I don't hear you. Then I say what you said, and we wait for the green light. I just said that, you say. We watch the buses and taxis go by while we wait for the green light, and you speak and I don't hear you. And I say what I say, and you don't hear me. And then you say what I said. I just said that, I say. Did you? I didn't hear you, you say. And we stand by the roadside, waiting for the green light, and we say what we say, word for word. I hope you like that. When I'm reading from this book, what I usually do, I just see I'm reading from the proof copy, which has got a big tick on the front. I read this poem, it's the last poem in the book, which in a funny sort of way, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, kind of leads on to my second collection, which is all about love in one way or another. But this is quite an old one now. The Power of You. In the still, quiet centre of you are all the mountains and valleys, all the streams, rivers, peaceful lakes and raging oceans, all the forests and plains of this earth. In the still, quiet centre of you are the sun and moon and all the planets and stars of the universe forever. In the still, quiet centre of you is all the love there ever was in all the world, through all time, in the still, quiet centre of you. Thank you for listening. I'm going to read some poems from my second collection in a little while, and some new work that I hope will be my third, and some of it which won't, which is new. I'm going to continue this reading now with a few poems from my second poetry collection, Breakfast in Bed, which was published in the UK by Indigo Dreams Publishing just about a year ago. That's this one. This book was just recently longlisted in the Wales Poetry Book Awards for this year, and I'm really pleased about that. At the time of filming, it's on the long list. when this film comes out, it may be nowhere or it may be on the shortlist, who knows? Getting on the long list is good. So this book really is all about love. This first poem is the first poem in the book, Alone and Together. It has an epigraph from Federico Garcia Lorca. A city that snares slow rhythms. I think he means Seville. In any case, that's where this poem was written. Alone and together. A river flows through afternoon's slow heat. Lorca's pace. Together and alone. Juntos y solo. Babble at cafe tables rises and drops into shadow by the waterside. Sun falls through trees, flicker of fresh leaves in green spring. Solo, juntos, alone and together. Wine is red, time is yellow. The rhythm of the river is ours for this hour adrift. That was written quite some time ago, but seems kind of relevant today, where we're having to do filming of ourselves reading in our own kitchens to be broadcast at festivals where really people should be together. So alone and together. And it's an invitation to spend an hour or so adrift with poetry, really, which is what we're doing. Let's be adrift together. Wendell Berry, the wonderful poet, American poet, US poet, and farmer and environmentalist, said, love is not an emotion, it is a motive. And certainly my main motivation for this collection is love. The motivation to gather this work together came from that idea of let's look at love. That's what poetry does, isn't it? I hope I've done it in a novel and different sort of way. And the poem that started me off thinking about putting these poems together in a book was the poem I wrote the day after Jo Cox, the British MP, was murdered in the street, which was back in June 2016. Before I read this, I just want to say, filming in one's own kitchen has its hazards. There's a cat waiting to walk across in front of my screen. I've got a do-it-yourself nutcase, sorry, seriously motivated do-it-yourself enthusiast next door who might be drilling the wall at any minute. So if you hear noises off and stuff, it's because we're human beings and we're doing this thing in this way. And let's just get on with it and see if it works. So this is the poem I wrote that was really the motivation for putting this whole thing together. It's a poem I wrote after Jo Cox MP was murdered. After the killing, the day after that man killed Jo Cox, I ate strawberries for breakfast because they were fat and red and ready with the sweetness of joy. I walked to the top of the hill and saw the sea, grey and cold but breathing below, all the while on its incoming tide over endless sands, rolling always and forever. I sat on a seat above the beach in the sun and emptied my mind, watched the waves, sheets of steel rolling on. I listened to Bach played on guitar, massive concertos pitching in 6 stunning strings. I spoke to a young woman who I'd known when she was a girl, and we talked about her glorious baby due soon on some happy day. I bought a new novel to read later. That anticipation that it is there, the words waiting for me when I am ready sometime this summer. I picked herbs from the garden, mint and parsley, and watched the cat rolling in the catnip quite off her face. I saw swallows scything the fat meadow to gather food for their young. And just to make sure that you were there, I sent you a text on a pretext. Still there. I read a poem on Facebook by a friend who said, "We have to do this because however bad the world is, there is love and light, and no one can take that away from us." So I wrote new poetry about love, because that is all there is. And I thought of life, this life, how we all have to keep breathing over our own endless sands. So let's talk about love. Keep breathing. There's all kinds of poems about love in this book. About love, of love, love poems. Here's one that I wrote for my dad. People seem to like listening to this. It's a tribute to my dad, really. Oil man. No one understood engines like he did. He'd stand there, listen, and he knew. He always knew what to do. He was the car doctor. They came from miles or called him out if they couldn't get started. His large, strong hands with hairy backs would shift the toughest nuts and bolts. Yet with those same fingers, he'd fix the finest needle in a carburetor, so deft, so sure of his actions. The best sight in the world was his legs sticking out from under some car, or his bent back, head under the bonnet, brown overall flapping, baggy trousers billowing, feet in slippers, if Mum didn't catch him first. Pungent sense of engine oil seeped through his skin. It was the driving force in his veins, working silently to make everything work. He had it all for us. Ignition, timing. He was our shock absorber, our brake, our strength, the oil in all our works. That's for my dad. And here's one for a friend who I've actually lost touch with now. We were good mates for a long time. And she's the reason I wear pink shoes. You should have seen the shop. Deep marine blue all over the front. Her tan, if it was good, she'd wear bright yellow to make the contrast with the blue. And she'd make sure her hair colour was the correct shade of red. Real red, not auburn. She sold teapots, all white with coloured dots, blue, red, yellow, green, and jugs for milk, butter dishes to match, cups, saucers and mugs in primary colours with spots and stripes. Even her scrubbing brushes wore colours. Red and green bristles shone out of willow baskets. There were throws in autumn garb, rust, Virginia creeper, scarlet, acer maroon and beach brown, and cushions to scatter like falling leaves, candles in all colours, some even rainbows with holders to match or contrast. Customers touched things. They couldn't resist. Picked them up, put them back askew, a tight smile. A taut thank you as they left. She'd wait until they'd gone. The door closed behind them, and she'd put everything back exactly where it should be. Perfect. It was her favourite word. She was lovely. She's not on social media. I can't find her. Never mind. So love poems and stuff. We also need to write about when things go wrong, I think. Can't all be lovely, can it? So this is one of the milder ones that I write about the downside of relationships going wrong. There's quite vitriolic stuff in here as well. This is We Should Have Talked. We should have talked about all that stuff. We should have sat together in your room, blue eye to blue eye, looked close, seen each other, me recognizing you, you seeing me, really seeing. How did we manage to miss ourselves? We should have talked before your gaze followed a separate path, before we looked east and west, before we lost our map. We should have talked before you turned directionless, before I found my certain path. We should have talked. And yes, we should all be talking as much as we can, especially now. And then when things start to go right again and love comes in the window or wherever it comes from, I get a bit seriously into one-to-one love here. This is Being Watched. Her chemise lands in a whisper of silk on slate. Light streaks the wall where afternoon sun finds gaps in blinds. She knows he watches, so she spins. Turns in a whirl of sun and shadows, dust motes float, her skirts swirl and fall, her hands snake in a rhythm only she can feel. Heat pricks her neck. The blush of her knowing shows on her face, and sweat cools, making a dampness on her back. I don't often read this next poem out because it's quite tricky to read out. It's actually a sonnet, but it's a bit of a change on the normal sonnet format. It's the title poem in my book. So this is Breakfast in Bed. In the morning, when you bring me strawberries, it is the way you concentrate so carefully to select each unspoiled bursting berry, the ripest, reddest. It is the way you watch as you raise these gifts to my mouth and place them between my lips. It is the way your eyes see me clearly as I suck and savor these fragrant fruits. I turn my eyes away. Red fruit in glass bowl on pure white sheet. Then it is the way you lick juice from your own lips that wakes new light as our eyes meet. I hope you're enjoying this. Two more from this book. I want to read this one because I particularly like it. It's one of my favourites to read out. Who knows if it's one of the favourites to be heard out there, but I like reading it. This has an epigraph from Allen Ginsberg's poem, Song. The epigraph is, "The weight we carry is love." And this is Rest in the Arms. I remember the hard muscles of your thighs across mine, your arm heavy on my breasts. I am pinned by you, a little afraid of your bulk on me. But as I lie here, hardly able to breathe, I don't want you to move. I am comforted by this load, this holding that I thought would never be again. While our warm bodies cool, exposed by a dragging duvet, I watch moon patterns on the wall, striped shadows of blinds, and I think of Ginsberg's lines. The weight of the world is love. And as I know I won't sleep yet, I try to recall more words. The burden of life is love. The burden of life is love. I hear the steadiness of your breath as you sleep on me. Rest in the arms of love. Thank you. Thank you for listening. It would be better to do this in front of a live audience. It's quite weird. But you're live. You're listening out there somewhere, sometime in my future. It's weird, isn't it? I'm going to read the last poem in this book before moving on to some other stuff, more recent work, and maybe work that might appear in my third collection. As with my first collection, the last poem in this book also gives some sort of premonition of what might be coming next in the next book. This is called Boundless. Hair knotted with brine, sharpness of salt, soft touch of seaweed breeze. Hot gritty sand on bare feet, cool water around ankles, holes, as tide tugs, draws you. Seagulls call and shout. Horizons are everywhere. A world tensed tight with struggles, unravels, disentangles, becomes free. And you know how it feels to see forever, as far as love. Thank you. I'll be back. Now I want to do something a bit different. I need to stand up for this one. This poem is a great deal to the wonderful poet Kim Adonizio, and I need to read it out with apologies to her. You may or may not know her poem, What Women Want, but this is a bit of a take on that. I was asked to write about selkies, you know, those seal creatures who come out of the sea and leave their pelt on the shore and then become women. And then when they go back to the sea, they put their pelt back on and they look it up. I've stolen her rhythm and her idea, really, for this. This is What Do Selkies Want? I want a silver dress. I want it smooth and pearly. I want it real tight, slick and shiny like silk. I want it watertight. I want it to cover all my fine flesh until someone flays it off me with a long pointed paring knife. I want to swim across the bay, past the harbour and the fishing men with their big boats, past the rocks and lifeboat men and fish and chip shop and ice cream wagon, past the lobster catch boys and the trawling dawn shipmates, past the point with the glittering lighthouse. I want to swim and dive like I'm the only selkie in all the surf-bound seas, and I can have my pick. I want that selkie dress so bad. I want it to reinforce your worst worries about me, to show you how little concern I have for you or anything except what I want. When I find it, I'll hold that silky cloth to me like I'm getting a new skin to carry me into the sea, through all the growing and the birthings, the pup crying years, and I'll never take it off. It will be my blessed, soft, silky, silky dress I will wear to the end of the ocean. So, thank you very much, Kim Adonicio, for your poem about the red dress. And listeners, if you don't know that poem, you can Google it. It's really easy to find. What Do Women Want? Kim Adonicio. So thank you to her. I haven't been able to perform that poem live yet because I've written it since we started all this staying home stuff, and we haven't had any events to do it. So I thought I'd give it a go. And there's another one here that is better read out loud live than really on the page. And this one's about mermaids. This is the quiet one in the corner. I've got used to hiding my body under long flowing dresses, silky skirts down to the ground. It's quite tricky to get the feet right, but most of the time I hide them under my desk. Anyway, the men don't notice anything below my boobs, and the women are jealous of my silky hair, so no one will see my shiny green feet. They don't notice that I only come and go when no one else is there. First in, last out. A committed worker puts in all the hours. They know I like to swim at weekends, but I turn down their invitations to beach parties. I like to go alone to secret places. They wouldn't believe the parties we have, me and my sisters. Out there in the bay, under the glorious waves, 48 hours of bliss from Friday night. We frolic and call together, singing our songs over and over. Some of us haul out on rocks to see the boats come in, catch the eye of a fisherman or two, see who can lure them to linger. Occasionally, if we have a specially good weekend, there will be a whiff of fish in the office on Monday morning. I keep a floral spray in my desk. It does the job. Last weekend, there was a fisherman lost at sea. They didn't find a body. I had a frightful headache on Monday. Took a couple of days off. Thank you. And to finish up, I will read a couple of poems from my third collection, which has gone to a publisher for consideration in the last few weeks. So who knows whether or when it will be out. But a lot of my, the third collection is about swimming and water and woodland and stone. So it's about we come out of the sea, we live, we go back through stone and we go back to the sea. And that is my take on things. This is I Am Water. When sun is harsh in afternoon, I kneel, scoop cool water in cupped palms. How fresh and full in throat. Going down, I pull it in, feel cleanness, greenness fills all cells in body. And lake reaches, sucks me into itself, folds my heart in its currents, where somehow I breathe, move freely, and wonder where I come from, where I will go. Swim wild, allow lake to swallow me into its peace. Tiny fish flicker silver around naked flesh. Water murmurs secret stories, makes music flow over body and into me, my beginning and ending. Place of depart and return, to and fro, lapping the shore, sipping me, wanting me more. Where I come from, where I will go. Who knows? And I wanted to read this next one because it's about Cantre'r Gwaelod, which is known as the, alternatively known as the lost land of Wales under Cardigan Bay. There's lots of petrified forests that are exposed by storms that are under the sea, under the bay. And recently another one was found, not very far from where I live, a bit further north. So this poem is about all that, really. The big cities and villages under the sea and Cardigan Bay. Cantre'r Gwaelod. Down along the deep causeways, ancient voices still call over sunken villages, and bells toll from castle towers, above drowned ramparts and overrun dikes, all swept away in a tide swipe. In the cool dark at the bottom of the bay, all I hear is whale song calling over miles, punctuated with dolphin clicks of greeting, as a bottlenose nudges gently from the side. In the kind of sunlight you can only know here, a refraction shafts through fathoms to tumblestones of seabed, where anemones linger. Here is stillness in swamped cottage gardens, where pink corallina now bends its fronds. Golden brown tendrils of carrageen float, and fur-bellowed fingers reach out to stroke my drifting body, and bells toll the unseen hour. So, lost cities under the ocean, lovely legends we have. And here's a little one I wrote about moon jellyfish, which I love. They're usually in our seas early in the season around June. The Latin name for moon jellies is the title of the poem because it's so lovely. Aurelia aurita. Moon jellies bump gently against my body as I float in flooding tide, early morning, late spring. Creatures without brain, blood, eyes or heart, yet beautiful free swimmers, pulsing movers, alive in their own light, iridescent silk with violet ornaments, carnal signals. We let the sea swallow us and drift together. They murmur untold stories, older than dinosaurs. And finally, this will be the last poem in my book 3. Onward. Soft sand for foot massage. Cold, cold sea lapping hot skin. Taste of salt. A gentle breeze off the shore. Sun sparks on wave tops. Light refractions weaving below. Oyster catchers call across a clear view to Anisentli, over the wide of the bay. Surf swells to lift and carry me away. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you to all the organisers for inviting me to do this reading. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.